Okay, good afternoon, class. Let me start today with the second unit, which is money demand and supply. Okay. Uh, okay. So, what are the topics that we have? We have microeconomic determinants of demand for money and demand for money functions, quantitative theory of money, transaction theory of the demand for money, Friedman's restatement of quantitative theory of money, monetary base, credit creation, movements in monetary base, monetary aggregates, and velocity of money and its variability. So in the first part, we will do the first three topics. So what is demand for money? Now, when we talk of demand for money, we are actually talking about how much assets an individual wish to hold in hand in the form of money, that is liquid assets, as against illiquid physical assets. Illiquid physical assets are those which are kept in the banks in the form of deposits, different types of deposits. So the amount of money that an individual holds, it's also known as liquidity preference, your preference to hold liquid asset, how much you want to hold. That is demand. Now, what are the determinants for the demand for money? So demand for money is related with the income of a person, the interest rates that is there, and whether people want to hold assets in the form of cash, that is money, or illiquid assets. Now, determinants, when we continue with the same topic, the determinants of demand for money, if you see what happens is, like we see that the demand for money function, see it's downward sloping. It is inversely related with the rate of interest. Why? Because at higher rate, when the rate of interest is high, right, people would prefer to hold more bonds, because it will give them a high interest payment. And when interest starts falling, then what happens? Holding bonds gives them low return, so people would prefer to hold more money. If you see this diagram, when initially the rate of interest is R1 and the money supply curve is here. This is the initial money supply curve. So intersection of the demand curve and the money supply curve. That's here, which tells you OQ1 is the total amount of money which is held. And now what happens if suppose the rate of interest decreases to R1, then what happens at the same if the money supply is the same, it's at the same level. Now what happens? There is excess demand for money. Demand is X. Supply is up till here, and demand is fully here. So this is the excess demand for money. So to compensate that, like to address that issue, the supply of money gets increased and we come to the new equilibrium position where OQ1 is the total amount of money that people held in hand. Why is it? Because people prefer to hold money at hand, because keeping that money in investing it in bonds would give them less interest. So that's why demand for money curve is a downward sloping curve. Or it's also called, your demand for money is also called your liquidity preference. How much you want to asset you want to hold in liquid form and how much you want to keep it in illicit form, that is illiquid form, sorry, not illicit, but illiquid form, that is in the form of the other sort of assets. So what are the types of demand for money that we have? We have transaction demand for money, where money is used to buy goods. So this is basically related with your income. Higher, you have more income on hand, you can purchase more goods. Precautionary demand, money is also kept for meeting some emergencies, financial emergencies. And the third is asset motive or speculative demand. That's when people wish to hold money rather than assets, bonds, or risky investments. So they don't want to invest in these illiquid assets. So that's what they want to hold. Why? Because just as we explained, it will give them less interest. So Transaction demand for money. What is it? It's the money that we need to for purchasing of goods and services in a day-to-day aspect. And in the classical quantity theory of money, the demand for money is a function of prices and income. There we assume that the velocity of circulation is stable. Given the velocity of circulation constant, so transaction demand for money depends on prices and income. So if income increases, amount of money demanded will also increase. Now, in an inventory model, what happens is the demand for holding money depends on the frequency of getting paid. If you're paid once in a month, then you would prefer to hold more. If you're getting paid, say, every 10 days, then you prefer to hold less in hand. So it depends on the frequency of getting hold and the cost of depositing money in a bank, right? So what is the cost if you go to the bank? How much cost do you have? What is the cost that you bear, right? There is some cost, like you're going transportation and you're standing in the queue and all those things. Sometimes you have to pay the brokers for investment. So when employees are paid, they will hold some money for their buying their goods. So if they are paid once a month, they deposit half. They will deposit half to get interest payments. If they're depositing some interest to sell, and then withdraw after slowly. So withdraw after 2 months. But today, what has happened today? You don't have to go to the bank because of electronic transfer and debit cards, which has made it less relevant for people to go to the bank. Precautionary demand for money. What is it? It's the money, as we just said, which is needed for some unexpected purchases or emergencies. The third that comes up is asset motive. According to the asset motive, people demand money in a way to hold wealth. They're holding wealth. This is why, when do they hold this? Especially during the period of deflation, where investors expect the bonds to fall in value. There will be a fall in the bond value of the bond, so they will prefer to hold. So it's an asset. Holding assets in liquid form, that's also an asset, right? That's also wealth. Wealth either in liquid form or illiquid form, anything. But it's a wealth. Either you deposit somewhere or you're holding it hand. Speculative demand, according to Keynes, asset motive and speculative demand, it's related. So Keynes said that the asset motive he explained it through the concept of speculative demand. What did he say? He said that the demand for money is a choice between holding cash and buying bonds. That's it. How much you want to hold cash, how much you want to hold as bonds. So that's the demand for money depends on that. So more you want to hold and buy bonds, the less is demand for money. More you want to hold the assets in cash, more is the demand for money. So if you see this diagram, where on the y-axis we measure the interest rate, on the x-axis we have the demand for money or the liquidity preference. Now what happens? We have seen this previously, that as interest rate falls, so demand for money also goes on increasing, right? And the money supply starts increasing to meet this excess demand. But what happens is, if the interest rates are low, usually people will, what do they expect? They will expect that if the interest rate is going down, that at some point people expect that the rate will increase. The rate will increase. They're falling now, at some point it will increase. That means at that time the price of bonds will also decrease, because price of bonds and interest rates are inversely related. So in this case, what happens? Demand for holding wealth in the form of money will be higher, because interest rate is falling down. It's better to hold money now. And so because price of bonds have gone up, interest rate has fallen. So at some point the interest will go up, so the price of bonds will go down. Then it's best to buy bonds. But if the interest rates are high, so what happens? People expect at some point it's going to fall. Interest rate high means price of bonds is going down. At some point, interest rate will fall and price will go up. So it's better to actually buy bonds. So the demand for bonds increases, and there's less demand for holding money. Okay, so what happens up here is, like when the interest rate actually goes down, right? it goes down until it reaches say point which is 0.5, 0.5, which is lowest here. So beyond this, what happens up here is, this is the point beyond which the interest rate will not decrease any further. Even if the money supply goes on increasing, interest rate will still not fall down. That's the lowest. So this is what is, this portion is known. This is where we call it's a liquidity trap, where it's a situation where if you increase the money, or when we have an expansionary monetary policy, it does not increase the interest rate income, and hence it does not stimulate any economic growth. And what happened at this point, what is happening is, after the rate of interest has fallen to a certain limit, this is the point. So everyone would prefer to hold cash rather than debts, because where it's giving a very low rate of interest. So what is the fear is at this stage is that there is a deflation coming about, there is insufficient aggregate demand. So they will not want to hold like this at this stage. Everyone wants to prefer holding money. So even if at this point the money it goes up, total amount of money in the economy is going up, but the interest rate remains. It doesn't have any effect because people know that this is a very bad situation. This is so it's the same thing. So okay. Now portfolio motive, when we say portfolio motive, is what we talk of is the asset motive. So it's another way of considering asset motive. So what this was theory was basically developed by James Tobin, who placed emphasis on the trade-off between asset growth and risk aversion. So what he had to say, for example, if an individual is nervous about the future economic trends, he will hold money rather than purchase any risky bonds and shares. When you're very uncertain about the future, better to hold money than to keep invest in all these assets, bonds and shares where you will lose all your money. But if a person is very optimistic, he knows that okay, it's falling down the interest rate, at some point it will increase. Then he will take the risk and purchase fewer bonds and shares. He will do that. He will not keep everything on hand. Okay, now the demand for money can vary due to many other factors other than the income and the interest rates. Okay, so what are these? First is the technological changes. That's when we have debit cards are there, which makes holding cash less important. You can easily access your account money. You can do it, right? You can, so you don't have to. You can just withdraw the money from the ATM cards, and so it becomes, you don't have to hold enough money on hand. Availability of credit. If there is credit is made available, then what happens? The precautionary demand for money will fall. Why? Because people know that they can borrow in times of emergency. If they, in times when they meet some short-term difficulties, they can borrow. Irrational behavior of asset prices. There are certain times when market can actually enter into boom and bust. Boom and bust is a situation in which it's a period of great prosperity or rapid economic growth, which is abruptly followed by one of economic decline. So it happened when the share market was booming, and then due to the collapse of the Wall Street, and then it led to the Great Depression. It happened all of a sudden, just goes down, right? So it's one of the reason is where it's your it's driven by the psychological factors, that is over exuberance, right? Suddenly you see the economic growth happening, and the people are so excited, they go on investing, and then suddenly there's a collapse. So in the what happens by in these these are called bubble periods, right? Demand for assets will rise and demand for money will fall. So and then all of a sudden it'll just go down. So the demand for money comes from the desire to hold liquid assets, of which is the example of liquid assets, it's money. So one thing has to be noted here is that Money is not demanded for just for its own purpose, like own sake. That you don't need money just for the sake of holding money, but we need it to purchase economic goods and services. And as per Keynes, he said there are three motives of holding money. What we had discussed. First thing is to finance the daily purchase of goods and services. That's transaction motive. Secondly, people hold money for as a contingency against the unforeseen expenditure, which is the precautionary motive, as we discussed. The third is when people hold money as a store of wealth, so which is known as a speculative motive. So what happens? Why do people hold money for speculative purpose? Because they are uncertain about the returns from the other types of assets, financial assets, which in which they could hold their wealth. That is bonds. They are uncertain what's going to happen. And the returns from these bonds, there are two components. It has two components. One is the interest payment and the possibility of a capital loss or gain. So, but if by chance the expected loss is greater than the interest payments, then what happens? The net return is negative. And the individual concerned will hold no bonds, only money, because what is happening? The amount of loss is much higher than the interest. So we know that bond prices are inversely related with the interest rate. So what happens? So if an individual expects a sharp rise in interest rate, so what does this mean? This is the same as expecting a sharp fall in the bond prices. And again, he will hold only money. Right? Sharp rise means what? At some point it's going to fall. It's better that he holds money. So what Keynes had said that as Keynes supposed at the aggregate level that individuals hold a wide variety of different views about expected returns of interest in future. They have different people view it in different way, because depending whether they're optimistic or whether they are pessimistic, how they look into the future. And so as the current rate of interest fall more and more, people would expect that at some point it would rise. That means price of bonds will fall, and so more people would hold only money now. So same manner Keynes said that in aggregate demand for money for speculative purposes, LR, L is speculative demand for money, is inversely related with the interest rate. If the interest rate goes on rising, less amount of money on hand. If it is decreasing, more amount of money on hand, right? So, but on the other hand, the amount of money demanded for transaction and precautionary purpose, that is KPY, right, uh, is determined by the individual's level of income and the general price level. P stands for price level, Y is for income. K is the proportion of money that is income that is held for transaction and precautionary purposes. So, thus, for Keynes's theory, the demand for money is MD is equal to KPY plus LR. MD is the total demand for money. KPY stands for the transaction and precautionary demand, and LR is the speculative demand. So Y is the national income, P is the price level, K is the fraction or the proportion of income which is held in liquid balance, that is money. And so it's a fraction of, that's why the value of K lies between 0 and 1. And L is the liquidity preference or speculative demand, which is a function of rate of interest. So demand for money is positively related with the income due to transaction and precautionary motives, we've already explained, and it's negatively related with the rate of interest due to speculative motive, which has been explained. So what happens is, if price increases, people will require more money to buy the same amounts of goods and services. So demand for money increases. Whereas for when we talk of speculative demand, if the rate of interest increases, less demand for money. What is liquidity preference? It's the demand for money refers to the desire to hold money in liquid form. as an alternate to purchasing income earning assets like bonds. So demands your preference to hold money and not the other sort of assets which gives you some interest, that is bonds. So money can be used for any purpose immediately, and therefore people actually prefer to hold money either in as cash in hand or in some sort of readily withdrawable demand deposits in banks, that is savings account or current account where you can withdraw. When we say money on hand, it is not always the cash which you have at hand at home. It's even in your savings account or current account which you can withdraw. So that's, you need it for various purposes. So, and according to Keynes, this desire to hold this money is called liquidity preference. Now, the next topic that comes up is quantity theory of money. As per the quantity theory of money, money supply and price level in an economy are in direct proportion to each other. So when there is a change in the supply of money, there will be a proportional change in the price level. Okay, so it's basically supported by using the Fisher's equation on quantity theory of money. So this is the equation where Fisher said that other things remaining constant, as quantity of money in circulation increases, price level also increases in direct proportion, and the value of money decreases. MV is equal to PT, or if you simplify, P is equal to MV by T. M is the supply of money, V is the velocity of money, P is price level, T is volume of transaction, right? And what happened? Why is the value decreasing here? Because the price is going up. Price is going up. So the purchasing power of money decreases. That's why value of money decreases. So like other commodities, the value of money or the price level is also determined by the demand and supply of money. Right? Let's talk on the supply side. Supply of money, it's consisting of the quantity of money, M, and multiplied by the number of times this money changes hands, that is velocity of money. This is the supply of money. This is the supply side. So V is the transactions velocity of money, means the average number of times a unit of money turns over or changes hands, how many times. So that talks of the number of transactions that is happening during a particular period of time. So MV is M into V, that is the total volume of money in circulation during a particular period of time. But since money is used only for transaction purposes, so total supply of money is also from the total volume of or total value of money expenditure for all transactions in the economy, because you're using for transaction purpose. Next comes up is demand for money. Now this is where we talk of this P into T, that is the demand for money. Demand for money. Money is demanded not just for its own sake, that is holding it, but we demand money for transaction purpose. So what is the demand for money? That's equal to how much we are actually paying, that is total value of all goods and services that is transacted. So which is equal to the total amount of things, that is T, that has been there in the market, and the average price level, so P into T. So as per Fisher's equation of exchange, it represents that there is an equality between supply of money or the total value of money expenditures in all transactions and the demand for money or the total value of all items transacted, right? So demand is equal to supply, right? So hence supply of money is equal to demand for money. Supply of money is also called total value of money expenditures for all transactions. Demand for money is the total value of all items transacted. So MV equal to PT, right? Now the equation for exchange, it's an identity. See this? It's equal to means identity. MB is identically equal to PT. And this equation, what does this equation say is that the actual total value of all money expenditure is always equal to the actual total value of items sold. So what is spent for purchases, that is MB, and what is received for sale, PT, they are always equal. What someone spends is received by someone else. Exactly the amount. How much you are spending to buy some things, you're paying it to the person who's selling. The person is getting the same thing. Okay, so Fisher now also said like this. What he did was he extended this equation of exchange and he included demand deposits, bank demand deposits. That's M1, and the velocity. Its velocity, that is V dash, in the total supply of money. So the new equation of exchange becomes MV plus M dash V dash is equal to PT, right? So according to Fisher, the general level of prices depends on 5 factors. M, that is total volume of money in circulation, and its velocity, that is V, the volume of bank deposits, that's M dash, and its velocity of circulation, V dash, and the total volume of trade, that is T. So the transactions approach to the quantity theory of money. In this new equation, it states that and other things remain same, that is V, M dash, V dash, T remains same. There is still a direct proportional relation between M and B. It's still there. So if the quantity of money is doubled, price level is also doubled. And what happens if price double? The value of money gets halved. And if the quantity of money is halved, price level is also halved, value of money gets doubled. That's what happens. Price falling means your what happens with the say the purchasing power increases. With the same money, you can now purchase much more, so the value increases. So if you actually see this, it doesn't affect the equation. Is not getting affected because of the bank deposits. Still remains the same, right? So what are the assumptions of Fisher's quantity theory? First, it said that there is constant velocity of money. Right, Fisher said that the velocity of money V is constant, and it is not influenced by the changes in the quantity of money, but rather, in other words, the velocity of money depends on some exogenous factors like population, trade activities, habits of people, interest rates. So more number of people, more amount of trade activities, more is the velocity of money. So, and these factors are more or less stable and change very slowly over time, over a period of time. So V tends to be also remaining that's constant, so that what happens, any change in the money supply will not have effect on the velocity of money. The second assumption is constant volume of trade or transactions, that is T. Right, and it is also not affected by changes in the quantity of money, but it's determined by it is independently determined by factors like natural resources, technological development, population. Okay, which is not part of the equation. The equation it's there. The MV plus M dash V dash is equal to PT. It's not there, and so it changes slowly over time. So any change in money supply will have no effect on T. T being constant also implies that there is full employment of resources in an economy. The third assumption is that price level is a passive factor. Passive factor means that price level is affected by other factors of the equation, but it does not affect them. It gets affected, but it does not. So it's passive, it's not active, right? P is the effect and not the cause in Fisher's equation. So an increase in M and V will raise the price level. So similarly, an increase in T will reduce the price level. It starts. That's how it goes. It gets affected, right? If M and V increases, price also increases. But if T, that is the total volume of trade transaction, it goes up, what happens? When you people buy in bulk, price level also goes down. The fourth assumption is where money is a medium of exchange, right? The quantity theory of money, makes an assumption that money is used only for exchange purpose, medium of exchange, for facilitating transactions. It is not hoarded or held for speculative purposes. There is a fifth assumption is there is a constant relation between M and M dash. As per Fisher, he assumed that there is a proportional relationship between the quantity of money and the bank deposit, bank money which is there. Okay, so what bank money is, it depends upon the credit creation by the commercial banks, which is in turn it's a function of the current money. It depends like how much credit is created by the commercial banks, and which depends on the current money. So the ratio of M and M dash, it remains constant. It is totally constant, and the inclusion of M dash in the equation does not disturb the quantitative relation between the quantity of money and the price level. It does not affect in any way. Why? Because when we say the total amount of money in the economy, money supply, it's part of it is in bank deposits, part of it is in hand. If the deposits are more, supply of money on hand is less, but the total amount is the same. It's M plus M dash is the total amount of money that is it's there. So if one increases, the other decreases, but the total remains the same. Okay, the sixth assumption is long period, right? So what happens is the theory is based on the assumption of long period over a long span of time, right? V and T are assumed, they are considered to be constant. So what happens? M dash V, V dash T, in the equation, they are considered as constant over time. And price is a passive factor here. So it's very clear that the change in money supply will lead to a direct and proportionate change in P because other factors are constant. So what are the broad conclusions in Fisher's quantity theory? Firstly, the general price level of a country is determined by the supply and the demand for money. And given the demand for money, changes in money supply leads to a proportionate change in the price level. Thirdly, since money is only a medium of exchange, changes in money supply changes absolute and not relative prices. Absolute, not the relative prices. And so all the and it leaves all the other real variables such as employment and output unaltered. So money is neutral. It does not change the real prices. Only the nominal gets changed. So that's why it's neutral. Money is neutral. And another condition, equilibrium condition of full employment, the role of monetary or fiscal policy is very, very limited. That's another thing. During the temporary disequilibrium period of adjustments, a proportion and appropriate monetary policy can help in stabilizing the economy. And the monetary authorities, with the help of changing in the money supply, can influence and control the price level and hence the level of economic activity of the country. They can do it, change in the money supply. So, but you know what? The theory has been criticized by Keynesian economists and economists from Monterey School of Economics. Why? Because they said that the theory fails in the short run. Why? Because the prices are very sticky. So, moreover, it has been proved that the velocity of money doesn't remain constant over time. It changes. But despite of all this theory is still respected and it is used to control the inflation in the market. That's why it's still used. Okay, the third topic that we have today is transaction theory of demand for money. Now, Keynes had assumed that transaction and precautionary demand for money is a function of, it depends on income. So changes in interest rate has no impact on them. But according to Baumol said that the rate of interest also affects the transactions motive for holding money. Why? Because when you hold money in hand, it gives high liquidity. You're having more liquid assets, but it results in the loss of interest. Why? Because the money is not deposited in the bank. You're losing some interest. That's why rate of interest also affects the transaction demand for money. Okay, so to prove this, what Baumol has shown that the optimal amount of holding money is determined by minimizing the cost of interest income that is foregone. Interest income foregone is when the opportunity that you lose if you do not keep your money in deposits. That's the cost, right? And the broker's fee. So what he did is he the actually explain this with the help of the model, like with the help of the following model, where he said that he denoted y as the total salary, the amount of salary that an individual gets. The average amount of cash withdrawn each time the individual goes to the bank is denoted by C. Number of times the person goes to the bank to withdraw cash is denoted by T. The broker's fee, which he has to pay every time he makes a trip to the bank, is B. Now, broker's fee is it's the broker's fee. Usually, when we say, we think of actually when they are actually investing when you invest money in, say, some bonds and shares, and you pay. But broker's fee, in when we talk of savings account, right? What is the broker's fee? It's the cost of the transportation cost plus standing in the queue where you're standing and going. That's also cost. That's the fee that we're talking about. So, say for example, let the salary of the person is 12,000, right? Now, Baumol had given three situations. First case is that the individual gets his whole pay check encashed. He just encash everything in the money on the first day, right? And which he spends throughout the month. So, what is his average holding per day? How much is his average expenditure per day? So, its total is 12,000 divided by 30. That is 400 per day. So, and what happens at the end of the month? He's left with zero money, right? So, what is his average money holding in that month? That is 12,000. 12,000 at the beginning and zero at the end. So, 12,000 plus zero, that's 12,000. 12,000, that is same as C, right? Divided by 2, which is 6,000. 6,000. So, yeah, 6,000 before the 15th of the month and 6,000 after that, right? So, and in this case, what happens? He's incurring the broker's fee only once, because one time he's going. So T is the total number of time he goes to the bank. That is Y by C. Y by C, which is 12,000 by 12,000, which is 1, right? So in this Y, because Y and C are equal in the first case, in this situation. Second situation, what happens is, instead of the individual says that let me not withdraw everything on the first day, he'll withdraw just half of it, that is 6,000, keeping the rest 6,000 savings account, which will give him a 5% interest. But his expenditure per day is still the same, that is 400. So what happens? So right now he's holding only 6,000, right? At the end of the 15th day, on the 15th day, it becomes zero. Then again, he withdraws on the 16th day of the month, the rest 6,000 he withdraws, right, and starts spending it. Same rate of 400 per day, and by the end of the month, it becomes zero. So, what is the total or the average money holding in this case, the money management scheme? What is happening? So he's withdrawing 6,000 at the beginning, and by 15th it becomes zero. So 6,000 plus zero, 6,000 divided by 2, which is 3,000. What is the number? How many times he goes to the bank? It's number of times that he goes to the bank is where we talk Y by C. Y is 12,000. C is the amount of withdrawal each time. That's 6,000. So the T is 2. Twice he goes. Third case which we have here is where he withdraws on a quarterly basis, 1/3, right? He withdraws 4,000, and he uses it till uh, for 10 days, right? 4,000, and then again on the 11th day, so he withdraws another 4,000, and on the 21st day he withdraws the last 4,000. So he withdraws 4,800, 8,000 is kept in his savings. He gets again 5% interest is there. So what is his average holding that he's having in this case? So 4,000 at the beginning, and by 10th it's 0. So 4,000 plus 0, that's 4,000, divided by 2, that is 2,000, right? And the number of times he's going to the bank is y by c. Y is 12,000, c is 4,000. So y by c, 12,000 by 4,000 is 3. So t is 3. So now let r be the interest rate that is lost, interest rate income that is lost, interest rate that he's losing by holding money. That is it. So what is the total amount of interest income that he's losing if he's holding money? So rate of interest is R, and what is the total amount, the average money that which is held by the person? That's half of the cash withdrawn. We just saw C by 2, right? 12,000 by 2, then 6,000 by 2, and 4,000 by 2 we had seen in the three cases. So the total interest income that is lost in the first case, that is R into C by 2, that is R is 5%, C is 12,000. So you get, he loses 300. Second case, what happens? C by 2 is 6,000 by 2, so 5% of that is 150. The third case, it is 100. So what do you see? Like if he's keeping more amount of money in the bank, the total amount of interest income that he loses, it decreases from it's coming from 300 to it's coming down to 100. And also this is one cost, and the other cost is the cost incurred due to broker's fee. That is, each time he goes to the bank he has to pay a fee. Total number of times he goes to the bank is T, and the broker's charge is B. So the total cost is that is incurred, total cost incurred by the individual for on broker's fee, that is this, and the interest income foregone, that is RC by 2. So that gives you the total of this, gives you the total cost. B is the broker's fee, T is the total number of times he goes to the bank is Y by C. So, and what we know that T is denoted by Y by C. So instead of T, we can substitute T by Y by C. So it becomes total cost is B into Y by C plus R into C by 2. Okay. Now, what we also have is, see, like if you actually simplify this, start simplifying to find the cost, what you see that the average amount of cost withdrawn, which minimizes the cost, that is denoted by C is equal to square root of 2by by R. So which means that the average amount of cost withdrawal, which will minimize the cost, is the square root of 2 times the broker's fee multiplied by the individual's income, that is Y, and divided by the rate of interest. And this is called the square root rule. So what do we actually see from this rule? That if there is a high broker's fee, B is high, that means what? And the people are not willing to go to the bank multiple number of times to withdraw money. They would prefer to hold money on hand, more money off hand, so that they don't have to go to the bank. They'll reduce the number of trips. On the other hand, what happens is, if the rate of interest is high, so then they're more likely to hold less amount of money on hand. They would want to invest more because it'll give them more income, right? Higher rate of interest, transaction demand for money decreases. Higher is the broker's fee, and higher is the transactions demand for money. So what do we see? That we see that rate of interest and the transactions demand for money is inversely related. So we see here that the interest that we are talking of, it is actually, we are talking of the opportunity cost of holding money instead of bonds, savings and fixed deposit. That's the interest that you lose. So higher the rate of interest, greater is the opportunity cost of holding money, right? So which means what? You have the greater is the interest income that you are giving up for holding money for transactions. You could have earned that money, but you're foregoing it. So the opportunity cost high increases. When the rate of interest goes up, the opportunity cost also goes up. Opportunity cost of holding money. So when the rate of interest is high, people will generally try to reduce or economize the use of money and will demand less money for transactions. But when there is a lower rate of interest on bonds and savings and deposits, so what happens? The opportunity cost of holding money is also less, and people would prefer to hold more money for transactions at that time. So which this actually led to the conclusion, as per Baumol, that transactions demand for money, it is downward sloping, it is inversely related to the rate of interest. See, it's downward sloping. Rate of interest and demand. So it's, as the rate of interest goes down, then demand for money also goes high. It goes on, if it decreases, demand for money goes up. Okay, so at higher rate of interest, bonds, savings, and fixed deposits are more attractive compared to holding money for transactions. Okay, right. So that's exactly, it says when the rate of interest is, it's a higher rate of interest, people hold less money for transaction purpose. Now when the interest rate goes down, what happens? Demand for money increases more and more. People are holding more money, right? Because the opportunity cost of holding money is less, and so people will hold more money for transaction, and hence the curve is downward sloping. Transaction demand for money curve is downward sloping. And what did we actually look up from here? If we actually see the square root formula that we have, it says that with the square root formula, that is C is equal to square root of 2by by R. So what does it say? That transactions demand for money, it is directly related to, with income, so it varies directly. And higher level of income, greater is the transactions demand for money for a given rate of interest that we have, right? So if you see here, in this case, in the diagram that we have, there are three transactions demand for money: y1, y2, y3, right? And it is seen that if you look into the square root formula that we have, what do we see? That the optimum money holding for transactions, when it increases, right? But it increases less than proportionately to the increase in income, because it's square root. It's increasing, but it's at a lesser proportion. It's not increasing at the same rate. Okay, so income is increasing, see, so high, but the amount of money that is increasing, that is increasing, but at a lesser rate. The rate is much less than proportionate rate. So this is where it says that because it's from the square root formula, that optimum money holding for transactions will increase, but less than proportionately to the increase in income. Why? Because income increases at some point. What happens? Even if income, we need money for meeting all our day-to-day transactions, keeping some money for emergencies, right? And beyond which, why do we need to hold that money? Even if the income increases, we would prefer to keep it in assets or deposits. So demand for money for will increase. The money demand for money, for transactional demand for money increases, but not at the same proportion as the increase in income, because we do not keep every entire money for keep it in liquid form. We don't do it. We keep some as deposits. So what happens? Like we see that transactions demand for money, according to Baumol, it depends both on rate of interest, as we've seen. More is the rate of interest, less is the less amount of money people are going to hold. And if the level of income increases, transaction demand for money also increases, but less than proportionate rate. So MD is a function of both the rate of interest, money demand. Transaction demand for money is a function of rate of interest as well as level of income. Okay, where MD is transactions demand for money, R is rate of interest, and Y is the level of income. So that's where we stop today, and we will continue this in the next class. Okay, see you in the next class.